A very warm welcome. You're joining us at Hyde Park on AdaDerana 24 with the UNHRC sessions around the corner and a new resolution to be brought against Sri Lanka with the question of Sri Lanka's accountability and human rights recommendations, compliances to be discussed and debated at the UNHRC sessions. I thought we'll talk about the question of UNHRC, foreign policy, Sri Lanka's economy and how investments shall be managed within the country. I've invited to our studios a strong voice of the Global Sri Lanka Forum from year 2016 to 2019 who was quite popular for discussing and talking about Sri Lanka, deliberating the question of Sri Lanka's accountability outside the country at UNHRC sessions, and also now the State Minister of Urban Development, Coast Conservation, Waste Disposal and Community Cleanliness, State Minister Nalaka Godahewa. Good evening and a warm welcome to Hyde Park.
Thank you very much, Indeewari. Thank you for inviting.
Thank you. I think the reason why I've also decided to talk about the economy and certain matters pertaining to investment is because of your past portfolios of SCC, Sri Lanka Tourism. You were heading these institutions. But to start off with, I think the most recent matter that Sri Lanka will have to deal with is the question of human rights. The United Nations Human Rights Commissioner Michelle Bachelet, her recent report has said that Sri Lankan government has demonstrated its inability and unwillingness to pursue a meaningful path towards accountability for international crimes and serious human rights violations. We've gone about this question. The last government from 2015 onwards, we co-sponsored a resolution and then the present government said you will not comply, and now this question again, the United Kingdom is going to, together with certain other countries, co-sponsor a resolution. What is the stance of the government now?
Our stance has been very clear. Government has clearly rejected Resolution 30/1, which never had parliamentary approval, which never had cabinet approval. When it was co-sponsored by Sri Lanka, the foreign minister never got the approval, the proper approval. So the current government, when it came to power, made it very clear that we do not agree with 30/1. However, already most of the suggestions, except a few, have been implemented, like the Office of Missing Persons and all those things. We are not disbanding them. We will continue them. Those institutes will be supported. The budgets have been allocated, fairly good sums, and the process will continue. We are not going to disband any of those things, but the way it was approved, we are not in agreement.
And when the UN Human Rights High Commissioner says there is demonstrated unwillingness by the government to move forward, does this mean that the government has not worked together with these UN organizations, international organizations, or taking arbitrary decisions and acting arbitrarily?
When I look at the latest report by the Human Rights Commissioner, the new commissioner, we are surprised to see the content. In a way, it is nothing new. I mean, we have seen this kind of things happening for the last so many years, starting from 2012 onwards. But this time, the report is very much a kind of an interference into Sri Lanka's internal matters, challenging even the constitutional changes that we did with two-third majority in the parliament in a democratic country. When you do something with the parliament two-third approval, how can an outsider come and challenge, saying it is not good for the democracy and all those things? And a lot of recommendations against Sri Lanka, like, you know, the peacekeeping missions should be disbanded, our people must be taken to ICC, and travel restrictions, asset freeze, and all those recommendations based on pure opinions. If you really look at her report, the bulk of its contents relate to the last 1 year. Of course, it refers to the previous war era and 30/1 and all those, and that's fine. However, her comments with regard to the last year surprises us, because last year we all know we have a global pandemic. Nobody could travel. None of their agents came here. She has no way to find out that detailed information about Sri Lanka, what's going on. And how can she make this kind of opinions? And if you really read that report, it's very much opinions, not facts. So based on her opinions, a series of opinions, she's making recommendations. So government has taken every allegation in that report one by one and submitted a response. And we have clearly explained why some of those allegations are blatant lies, why they're wrong, and also the actions that we are going to take. Like as I told you, we are going to continue most of the things that the previous government agreed in the 30/1, even though in principle we don't agree to passing that resolution. We are going to continue, we are going to support. So where is how can you say that we are not cooperating? We are cooperating very much.
How does Sri Lanka plan to respond to these sessions and these resolutions? Because this has to be done obviously at the sessions and
Yes.
In an orderly manner in compliance with UNHRC
Yes,
standards. But all these statements made in the media also reflects bad on Sri Lanka.
See, there's a procedure, there are steps. They normally before the report is written, they write to us asking certain questions. So series of questions were sent to Sri Lankan government, which Sri Lankan government responded. Then I think February the report came, and now we have responded to the report as well. So it's a draft report. What we get is a draft report. Now she'll be making her final report at the session.
Right.
So if she takes what we have told seriously, we sincerely hope she will, because we have very in detail explained why some of those information that she has got are wrong. So if she goes through and make corrective things, and she'll make a proper representation at the session, then at the session we will answer. Now some of those things that we have objected to, for example, there's continual reference to the panel of experts report. The panel of experts, the Darusman report, as we all know, was an assignment given to the Darusman committee by the then Secretary General for his personal information. That was never sanctioned by the UN. It was never an official document. So how can she refers to that? When she goes and makes references to that at the council, it becomes official. So we are categorically told that has to be taken off. So likewise, there are certain things we have objected. So we hope that she will take those things off and do the changes necessary. So whatever the final report comes, we will respond. And we have categorically told, don't come into confrontation. We are willing to cooperate.
But post-Easter Sunday attacks also, the increased presence of the military and the perception that there is military presence, militarization of administrative work, this also has been highlighted in the recommendations. How does the government respond to this?
So, Indeewari, now you are a Sri Lankan. Just look around us, and do you see any militarization happening here? Has government appointed any military officer for an official position other than some specific task given? Right? Of course, the General Shavendra Silva is handling the COVID issue. That's a special task. It's not a continuous job. It's not a continuous function. Then the things that are challenged in this report are appointments such as Admiral Sarath Weerasekara's appointment as a minister. After all, he was elected by the people, and he was in the government even before. This is not the first time he was elected. He was in the previous government also. Before 2015, he was there. And then now he has been elected. He got the highest number of votes from the Colombo district. And he has been given a ministry. What is wrong in that? That's not militarization. And the other people, whoever in the current government positions, are all retired people. Once somebody retires, I mean, don't you have the same civil rights like everybody else? If somebody says because that person was in the military, now he cannot be given any other public office, that is human rights violation. So what she's recommending is violate the human rights of these people.
There's perception that the now government, present government, is unable to maintain good relations with the United States and these Western powers, unlike the government of the good governance. When the past resolution too, there was co-sponsorship and there was some sort of cooperation happening between governments. But now it seems that there is confrontation between these institutions and government. That's the perception. How do you look at this?
I think you used the right word in the very perception. That's a perception, right? Now this government has made it very clear in our policy manifesto also. We are a very neutral government, right? We want to maintain friendship with every country. We are not biased towards a single country. That we have made it very clear, not only in our manifesto. President has told that repeatedly in his speeches, as ministers, we have repeatedly told that to whoever we meet, the ambassadors, even American ambassador, current ambassador has visited myself, and she has met all our ministers, and I don't see any problem. We discuss openly, we have our views, they have their side of the story, we have our side of the story. We discuss, we agree, sometimes we agree to disagree, but there's no anti-American thing in our government, right? America is a friend. Of course, they are having a lot of discussion right now, even on business investment. I believe the current ambassador will do her utmost to develop this further, and that's the impression I get. And we are inviting the American government to engage. We are inviting American investors to come. We are not rejecting them at all. So this story about confrontation is pure perception.
How well are we working with India, our closest neighbor, especially after the East Container Terminal matter, where Sri Lanka did not go ahead with an agreement, and then India is saying that they do not want the West as offered by the government, but Sri Lanka did not want to go ahead with the East Container Terminal agreement. But along with that, what sort of an impact will be there in international relations, especially India supporting Sri Lanka in these incidents?
Yes. See, if you look at India-Sri Lanka relationship for the last several decades, there were times that this got sour. There were times India-Sri Lanka relations were very, very strong, like when Mrs. Sirima Bandaranaike was the Prime Minister here, when Mrs. Indira Gandhi was the Prime Minister in India. They had a very, very strong bond. Later there were instances or years where this relationship got little sour. However, it started improving quite a lot after His Excellency Narendra Modi became the Prime Minister of India. Even with the previous government here, they started building a very good rapport, and I think it got improved further after Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa got elected here. Mr. Narendra Modi and Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa met. They have very good understanding. I think there's a continuous dialogue going. And if you look at the recent past, all the vibes I'm getting from our side is positive about India and India's relationship. What happened at ECT, I think, is a little bit of a miscommunication. Perhaps this would have been communicated a little earlier with India. Of course, the cabinet paper, when it was submitted, India made a statement saying that the previous agreements have to remain, and I respect that. They have to say that. I mean, of course, once you have a tri-party agreement, you can't unilaterally change it without consultation and discussion. So when Indian High Commissioner makes a statement like that, we should not object to that. But I think informally discussions had already started about that. Even I was involved to some extent with some of the companies who are involved in this, and there was an understanding what we were going to do is the best for both countries, a win-win situation. I think now the discussion is continuing. I'm very sure it will be amicably resolved. Like in the case of America, I mean, we consider India a friend. That's a government policy, and we want India also to come and invest and be partner of trade.
Won't we be antagonizing India, especially now with increased involvement of China? Yes, the China factor has been in Sri Lanka, but ECT and then these developments, aren't we antagonizing India?
No, actually, if you look at the ECT agreement, the recent cabinet decision, my personal opinion, not only my personal opinion, we discussed this with some of the companies involved locally as well as from India before the final decision was taken. It is what is finally decided is good for India, because the final agreement, to which even we got the endorsement from 22 out of 23 trade unions on the port, is to give the West Terminal to India, Japan and that group. Under the same terms, South Terminal was given to China.
Right.
The ECT agreement, which was under discussion, was not that much favorable to India. That was a 51-49% arrangement, and a lot of terms were not clear, and there were protests, there were a lot of disputes, and it would have been a mess. Right now, the government position is you get the West Terminal under the same terms that China got, 85%, 15%. And when I'm sure commercially, the people involved, the companies, will be far happier to work in a system like that than a 49-59% arrangement.
Going back to the question of the UNHRC sessions, what countries are we working together with? Because we saw certain opposition members saying that Sri Lanka will not have our traditional allies supporting Sri Lanka this time around. So are we working with these superpowers, with other countries also to garner support for Sri Lanka's case?
We are working with all the countries possible. There are 47 countries, and with the recent changes in the composition, we are in a better situation. Some of our friendly countries have now come in, and we are working with each and every country. It doesn't mean that all 47 will support us. I mean, there are certain countries traditionally will not support. There are certain countries who will always support us. There are certain countries in the middle. So we are talking to all those people. Our ambassadors are talking to them. President is personally talking to the ambassadors here, and we are educating them. Even our response to High Commissioner's report has been shared with all these countries. So now we are presenting the real facts and asking them to support, and we'll wait and see.
And on that note, we'll take a short commercial break here at Hyde Park. We're in conversation with Dr. Nalaka Godahewa. Welcome back. We are in discussion with State Minister of Urban Development, Coast Conservation, Waste Disposal and Community Cleanliness, Dr. Nalaka Godahewa, here at Hyde Park. Dr. Godahewa, I think to move on to the economic front, how well are we faring now? Because there are international rating agencies downplaying Sri Lanka's achievements and citing certain challenges, mismatches within the Sri Lankan economy. At the same time, we're talking about investments here and the challenges posed by an ongoing pandemic. How are we mitigating these challenges?
See, if you look at the situation when the current government came to power, it was not a rosy picture at all. As we all know, the Sri Lankan economy started kind of a downward trend starting from 2015. 2014, we had almost a 6.8% average growth for the previous 3 years. Then it started declining from 2015. Start with about 5%, then coming down to finally 2.1% growth by 2019. At the rate it was going down, even if the government didn't change, it would have gone down further. Right? Then what happened was, when the current government came, the President Gotabaya Rajapaksa got elected in November, and the COVID pandemic started troubling us from December, January. So for the last 1 year, like everybody else in the world, we are also impacted by the COVID problem. A lot of things that we wanted to do, we couldn't do. A lot of areas that we wanted to grow, didn't grow. For a classic example is tourism. We had a lot of high expectations for tourism, but the tourism had a disastrous year. Many other industries got affected like that. So because of these external factors, economy didn't improve at the speed that we would like to see. However, the basics that we want to focus on, areas that we want to focus on, we have done well. For example, one of the things that we wanted to focus on initially was strengthening our agriculture sector. This is something that we very clearly told in our manifesto. Of course, you can't improve the country's GDP by focusing only on agriculture. But we realize that almost 30 to 35% of Sri Lanka population depends on agriculture sector. Even though GDP contribution was less than 10%, that those people have to be taken care of. And we were very concerned of improving this agriculture sector and achieve some kind of a self-sufficiency in agriculture. So in that area, we have done well during the last 1 year. We have basically created a lot of excitement about agriculture. A lot of unutilized land have been now cultivated. The production is growing, harvest is better, and a lot of areas where we were importing agricultural products, we are now in a position to export. Re-exporting has stopped. So there are a lot of improvements. Then the next focus has to be the service sector and the industrial sector, where we are currently putting the basics right, basic infrastructure right. To take the industries to the villages, the village infrastructure has to be developed. Roads have to be developed further. Internal roads and the other infrastructure must be in place. All those areas, whole of last 1 year, we were working. So we are now more or less equipped to go and promote investment not only locally but overseas. So overall, I don't think time is lost.
You spoke about exports, developing exports and re-exports, there is a reduction. But again, with the import ban, we looked at an industrialization within the country, manufacturing-led economy. But how far have we come here? Are we really supporting small-scale industries that are trying to manufacture within the country to also reach markets outside, to venture into new markets? It's challenging at the present time, but how far is Sri Lanka aggressively looking at this?
I think given the current situation of this COVID issue and all those things, we have done well in that sector. If you look at the last budget and the government policies, they're very much friendly towards the small and medium sector. A lot of concessions are given, and the government is pushing the relevant organizations, the banks, and everybody has to go and support these people. So basics are done right. However, people also have to now be courageous and come forward and start their activities. Now, when you look at the stock market, we see that's happening. That's a positive sign, and people have confidence of what will happen overall. But the people have to now pull out their money and start investing also, I think, which will happen in time to come.
Former chairman of the Securities and Exchange Commission between 2012 and 2015. You touched on the stock market, the upward surge that we see, and now in recent times we see a correction of the market also, which may be termed as a correction. But how do you look at the matter of investment, as in people's literacy for stock market engagement and then market interest? We're talking about foreign interest, we're talking about local interest, but some sort of regulation was also needed. This may not be your subject area now, but would you like to comment on that?
See, when I was the chairman SEC during 2012-2014 period, we had a tenfold development plan for stock exchange. Very clear-cut plan. In fact, we wanted to make it $100 billion market by 2020. That was the plan. And we were working accordingly. It was growing very well. Unfortunately, since 2015, that total plan was abandoned, and it was just day-to-day activities. And most of the things that we could have done didn't happen. Under the current government, hopefully, now, though I'm not involved, I trust they will now take those things serious, and they are working on those things. As you very correctly said, stock market education, improving that was one of those 10 areas. Because there are a lot of people who come to the stock market without knowing the right knowledge. They follow us. They follow somebody else. So when the trend is there, people come and start investing. They flock to the stock market looking at the positive numbers, but they don't know at which right time to move out. So that is where they start losing. It's quite unfortunate. However, it's not a major issue if you keep educating the people. Sometimes when SEC or CSC try to educate the public of what's going on, people get scared and pull out. That's when sometimes you see market dip takes place, but that is also inevitable. You have to do that. Right now, I'm happy with the way market is growing. The corrections which are taking place on and off are normal. That happens everywhere, in every market. But before it gets further hot, we have to bring in more companies to get listed. We need more products in the market. It has to diversify further. So during the next 4 years, I hope SEC and CSC will concentrate on those things and implement what we had in our mind before 2015.
I remember speaking to the chairman of the stock exchange who believes that listing public entities will be good going forward in order to ensure that these loss-making entities, there will be some sort of revival. How do you look at this also as a former SEC chairman?
I was always a proponent of this, listing government institutes in the stock market. But before 2015, from the government then, we didn't have that much of support towards that. There was a confusion. Some people didn't understand the difference between listing and selling, right? So the listing a government institute in the stock market was interpreted as selling government assets. But in the current government, starting from the manifesto, we have made it very clear that we want to list the government institutes there so that the general public can come and get ownership of those institutes. And also the stock market will also grow. And if you look at my ministry, under my ministry there are 7 institutes. One of them is a new company called Selandiva. Now the Selandiva company has been formed to take decision as to on the future of assets like Hilton, Hyatt, Grand Oriental Hotel, and then Water's Edge and so many other state assets will also be brought in. And in the long run, we want to create some special purpose vehicles and list those things.
What will be the purview of this institution, as you said?
That is that some of those institutes, the assets that we have, will be brought under this company, and they will structure them in a manner that will facilitate investments. Some investments will be direct. Some investments will be through stock market. Some will be debt supported. So that restructuring process is currently taking place. But once we take some of those assets to the stock market, that will give an immediate boost to the stock market. So I think for those people who are interested in the stock market, I would say future is very good.
Going forward, you also spoke about tourism, a former chairman of Sri Lanka Tourism, 2010 to 2012, but now you're looking at coast conservation. This is also important when we talk about tourism. Most of our industry is lying in these areas, and some of our industry is affected due to changes happening within around Sri Lanka. But tourism, double blow to the economy, to the tourism industry after Easter attacks and due to the pandemic. But now decisions are taken to open up the economy, but again the informal sector seems to be neglected because there are regulations brought by the tourism industry. Yes, this is something I should speak to the tourism authority itself, but I think you might have some knowledge to share with us. How do we look at incorporating the informal sector, because they were hardly hit? They are overlooked because obviously they are not in the system, as we say, but they haven't registered also. But they also had a livelihood. They also contributed indirectly to the economy.
Yes. I'm not handling tourism anymore. However, I have my own opinion. And also, it's not an opinion. That was also something that we stated very clearly in the manifesto. However, the way to some of the discussions that are taking place in the tourism industry, there seems to be a debate right now. What kind of tourism we want in the future? Some people seem to be proposing that it has to be high-end tourism like Maldives. I don't want to interfere into that, but personally I don't believe in that.
Do we have the infrastructure? Do we have the facilities to cater to high-end tourists?
Even if we have, I think that's not the way we should go, right? Because the tourism to me in this country must support a larger cross-section of the society. It can't be just high-end tourist facility owners. When a tourist comes to this country, even the roadside retailer should be able to get a benefit out of that. The coconut seller should be able to get a benefit out of that. The tri-show driver must be able to get a benefit of that. That is the tourism we want. So you need to strike a balance between high-end tourism and the bulk tourism. So then you can create products to cater to these different segments, because Sri Lanka is blessed with so many natural advantages, so we can cater to all these requirements. So I hope they will get out of this debate whether it should be high-end tourism or not, and continue what we were doing, promote tourism as a whole, so that a larger cross-section of society will benefit. Almost 3 million people depend on tourism directly and indirectly. They were all hit during the pandemic. Where are they going to go if they say it is only high-end and restrict it to few areas? We must open up tourism as fast as possible, as President also says. The problem was COVID, because we have to be very conscious of the health regulations, but the strategy now we are going to adapt is the vaccination. We want to vaccinate the entire nation as fast as possible. That has been made very clear internally by the government.
Yes.
If we can tell the world, look, we are a fully vaccinated nation, right, within this year, how much confidence that it will give to the tourists who want to travel. Every year, more than 1 billion tourists travel the world. And they can't go to many countries in the world now. Even so-called developed countries are also struggling with COVID because they have large populations. They can't vaccinate everybody. But we have a smaller population. We can vaccinate everybody. And also we are now quite geared, unlike those days, to control, and people wear masks, and they're more disciplined. Not all, but they're more disciplined than they used to be. So I believe this we can use as an edge to attract tourists.
But before we go in for a short break, I want to ask you again about the small man, the informal sector. How do we create a system where they're also brought in, whether we go ahead with the high-end tourists or we strike a balance? Because these two incidents in Sri Lanka, we saw that their entire income, their lifeline, that was attacked. Yes, the formal sector was also affected, but how do we protect them?
Solution is numbers, no? See, when tourists come, people find ways to sell their products. I mean, you don't have to go and teach them how to make money. They find their own ways. So what we need to do is to increase the numbers, bring tourists of all categories, top end as well as the backpackers. Right? Don't reject them. The backpackers also cater to a certain segment of this country, but you can't fill the country with backpackers. So that is where tourism ministry has to be smart and strike a balance. How do you do that? But you need all these kind of people to come to Sri Lanka. From our ministry, we are creating the environment as much as possible, urban development, coast conservation, all those things.
I'd like to talk a little about that when we return after this short break here at Hyde Park on AdaDerana 24. Welcome back. We are in conversation with State Minister Dr. Nalaka Godahewa at Hyde Park on AdaDerana 24. Dr. Godahewa, you were talking about tourism and how your current ministry is looking at supporting the industry as a whole. But there was a time, I remember, long time ago when I spoke to you about this, there was a question and debate about taglines. How we promote Sri Lanka, how we market Sri Lanka, whether we are going to be a small miracle, the wonder of Asia. There were a lot of questions about this. But you did mention about marketing Sri Lanka here, or showing taking Sri Lanka's story about vaccination, about this story that the government has ensured that vaccination will be provided to all its citizens. What is the purview of the ministry now in ensuring that we support the tourism industry as a whole?
See, when you want to promote tourism, Sri Lanka has a certain natural advantage. So many different products. The variety that we have for tourism, no other country has in this world. So it is something that we can talk for hours. So without talking about those things, if you look at what we do as from our ministry, urban development, we are actually helping the tourism industry by creating the environment, building the infrastructure, city development, city beautification, coast conservation, all those things have an impact on tourism. Take for example, before 2014, the changes that are done in the Colombo city, that is where tourists come first. We made Colombo a beautiful city. Former Defense Secretary, current President Gotabaya Rajapaksa made Colombo a very beautiful city, and he wanted to take it to the other cities as well. All those things kind of stopped for the last 5 years. We didn't talk about those things. The floating markets, then the Dutch hospital, everything started going down. They were kind of abandoned. I have restarted those things. Now very soon floating market will be reopened. Gafoor building in Colombo is currently being renovated. The old fort city, just like the way Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa wanted, will be developed like an old city. Like when you go to France or all those Western countries, you will see a beautiful heritage in those areas. And throughout the country, heritage cities are currently being developed further with World Bank assistance. So a lot of work is currently being done. So we will build the infrastructure that is required to support tourism.
When we talk about urban development, also maintenance of these developed heritage sites, because this is a problem that we saw in the past, that millions are spent on refurbishing these heritage buildings, or maybe putting up new sites, but then maintenance, there have been lagging areas here. Are we setting up a separate unit to look at it, or the Urban Development Authority, will that look at it?
See, this is poor planning. Sometimes something that I insist now in my ministry is whenever you get engaged in a project, you must look at two things. Firstly, you must have secured the finances to complete the project. So don't start and stop it halfway. You must have funds to start and finish. So that's the first condition. Second one is maintenance. Has to be thought through before you start the project, and agree with the relevant parties, whether it is going to be done by our ministry, whether it is going to be done by a provincial council or by another ministry. We agree on all those things before we start engaging in a project. And if that was the way it was done even before, most of the problems that you mentioned would have arisen.
Garbage management it continues to be a problem, but Sri Lanka's first waste-to-energy plant was officially declared open on the 17th. An investment to the plant, 17 billion rupees. How are we looking at solving this garbage management and disposal? It's a problem. It has been, we saw tragedies too. It continues to be a problem.
See, this Western Power plant, 10 megawatt waste-to-energy plant, which will be managed by Atkins Spence Group, is a significant achievement in finding solutions to the garbage problem. This was conceptualized long ago, almost 11 years ago, and it started actually somewhere around 2012, but then there were some legal issues which are delaying the project.
This was conceptualized even before the tragedy, the Meethoramulla tragedy happened.
Meethoramulla tragedy took place in 2016, no? So this was 2012, right? 2012, it was conceptualized, tender was called, one party was selected, the current group, and then there was some legal issue. As a result, it got delayed, and finally those legal matters were resolved, and the project started somewhere around 2017. And after 2017 also, they have had issues with the former government, because the former government had at that time started working on the Aruwakkal solution. So they want to take Colombo garbage to Aruwakkal. So this plant was also to find solutions to the Colombo garbage. So there was some kind of a internal dispute which delayed the process, but now it is all done. The plant is now operational. They can per day consume something like 500 to 800 metric tons per day. Now, entire garbage collection of the Colombo Municipality Council now, with recycling and segregation and all those improvements, is about 400 metric tons a day. So, which means the entire daily collection can be sent to this plant, which is a huge achievement as far as the CMC is concerned. Then, because it has more capacity, some of the garbage from the Gampaha district also, particularly the coastal area, can come. When it comes to garbage, this is just one solution. We are currently thinking about 2 such plants in the country. The second plant was also approved sometimes back, but due to some financial problems that got stuck, we are trying to revamp that, maybe give it to a different investor. So within about another 18 months' time, we will have the second plant.
Where is that coming up?
That's at Kardiana. That plant has run into financial problems. Right. So the current investor who got the approval for the plant is unable to do that. So we are clear that that company cannot do that. So we are going to tell him either give it to somebody else, or we'll have to give to the total project to somebody else. We want someone who has the financial capability to run that plant, or rather construct that plant, so which will take about another 18 months. So we lost almost 2 years because of that problem. Then bulk of the problem in the waste problem will be resolved in most of the areas, particularly Western Province. Then we need some other solutions for smaller provincial councils, because large the waste to energy plants need something like 500 metric tons a day minimum. Right. But it is generated only in the Western Province. And not outside. Not outside. Now if you look at the other largest cities, Kandy is generating only 100 metric tons a day. That's the largest. Others are even smaller. So we are now looking at different technical solutions for those things. The long-term plan is to completely get rid of this garbage dumping. Dumping sites must go. But that will take another 3 to 4 years.
Does this mean we will look at a sustainable solution to garbage disposal?
But you can't expect a solution tomorrow, because this plan needs time to implement. But we have a very clear plan to get rid of garbage sites, but it will take about 3 to 4 years.
But whatever decisions we take, will that be consistent? Will these policies be transformed and passed on to administrations after administrations?
See, garbage has always been a problem, but people didn't look at scientific solutions for a very long period. If you look at people will say, okay, there's a garbage site my next door, take it away. Question is, where are you going to take it away? Wherever you take it, there are people living in that area also. So trying to relocate garbage dumping sites is not the problem, not the answer. The answer is to process that. To process that, there are different solutions like this waste to energy plant. If we implement most of those things within the next 4 years, of course, we need part of that for composting, because in the direction we are going towards organic the agriculture, we need composting also, so we can't incinerate the whole thing. Once we put all this in place, I think the next whoever come to power will continue. Why should they change it?
Before we wrap up today's discussion, Is there a disagreement within the government? How is the government going to work forward? Because we see in the media, we see a lot of social media posts circulating about disagreement within the government, tug of war, if we say. What is the truth to this?
See, when you say government, theoretically, government is the cabinet. Right? The cabinet,
the governing party.
The president has delegated his powers to the cabinet and then to state ministers, and the administration is there. So as long as the president and the cabinet are taking decisions collectively, the government has one decision. I think what you hear, the rhetorics what we hear, is not inside the cabinet. They are the views of different political parties, different individuals. They, of course, they have the freedom to express those things outside. Sometimes you can ask some of the decisions that were taken at the cabinet, why you're talking outside. Yes, that's a collective responsibility issue, but perhaps the issues are far too exaggerated, I think. Those things can be resolved through proper discussion, dialogue. What I believe is, this government came to power as a coalition. There were several parties involved in that. We all had one mission, and we must stick together and resolve whatever the differences we have.
Are the views, suggestions of the academics taken very seriously by the government?
Very much, because President Gotabaya Rajapaksa always believes in technocrats. When he became president, he was the first president to appoint a committee to select people for high post. Earlier it was done by the politicians, president and the politicians around him, but this time there was I was also part of that committee. We selected all chairpersons and directors of the government institute, never done before, right? Some of those people, most of those people are performing very well, some haven't, who have to be changed perhaps at one point in time, but overall, the situation has improved a lot. Just look at corruption. Do you hear allegations like you used to hear those days? Those days, I mean, previous government didn't take 1 year to get entangled in so many corruption issues. Do you hear those things anymore? They're performing. These guys, technocrats whom we have put into places, sometimes the media is not doing justice by giving them the opportunity to tell their story, because we are talking mostly about COVID and other issues, but they are performing, and we are listening to intellectuals. I mean, most of the time, the president has to take decisions. He appointed committees comprising of intellectuals and listen to their comments. But everything and anything can be improved.
Thank you very much for your time here at Hyde Park, Dr. Godahewa.
Okay, thank you very much.
We had with us Dr. Nalaka Godahewa, State Minister for Urban Development, Coast Conservation, Waste Disposal and Community Cleanliness, joining us here at Hyde Park on AdaDerana 24.